Good morning, hello and welcome to the first in a series of online careers events by Careers East Sussex. Today's focus is on the STEM sector, encompassing science, technology, engineering and mathematics. My name is Estelle Huell from Sussex STEM, and I'm going to be introducing you to some brilliant STEM professionals representing a few of the many types of organisations within the STEM sector, and many based here in East Sussex. So before we meet our guests, I'd just like to say a few things about STEM careers that you will hopefully find useful. Firstly, in my 10 years of working in the sector, I've found that the people I've met are very welcoming, supportive and great to work with. Secondly, you don't need to be a triple science student or a mathematical or engineering genius to work in STEM. There are jobs for everybody and many ways to start your career, including apprenticeships and T-levels. And thirdly, you don't need to be good at all the STEM subjects to work in STEM. That's because people with STEM skills often work in teams and help each other to complete project work. For instance, imagine how many new STEM related jobs or communities our communities will need to help us reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Yes, we need the world's big thinking scientists like Kate Marvel and engineers like Elon Musk, but we'll also need people to design eco-efficient houses, create carbon fixing green spaces, grow carbon neutral food in the transport, or to fix our electric cars, build solar panels, install heat pumps, and also to plan and to manage teams and communicate changes to members of the public. So, as you can see, there are going to be a great many jobs coming up in the STEM sector, in addition to the ones that there already are. But what about jobs in STEM in Sussex? James, are we ready to cue the film now? So now let's meet some great employers from the STEM sector. And don't forget, please, they're here to help. So please put your questions in the chat function and Lisa and Sophie will make a note of them so speakers can answer them in the Q&A session. So if we please get ready to welcome Rachel Groves. She is the Social and Sustainability Manager for Volker Fitzpatrick. And I've had a great pleasure of working with Rachel on previous events. She has tried to teach me the mathematics of laying concrete on a road, but sadly that just didn't go in for me. But anyway, Rachel, over to you, and we look forward to hearing your experiences of STEM.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rachel Groves. As Estelle said, I'm the Social and Sustainability Manager for a company called Volker Fitzpatrick, and we have a contract with Highways England to make improvements in East Sussex to a road called the A27, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So if you've been past Polegate and Berwick, and in the Lewis direction. Apologies if you've been stuck in our traffic jam. It will be better, honest. So I have been with Volker Fitzpatrick for 2 years in July. So I joined, as I say, at the beginning of the framework. We've got 3 contracts with High Vis England, and actually Stantec, I noticed, Sally, you work for Stantec, you're our design partner. So the Reading office is helping us with the design. So great that you're here supporting this as well. Thanks for that. So my journey is a bit convoluted, so it just shows never have a plan because it doesn't work. Always have a plan B. And my big piece of advice from today would be just go with the flow and don't worry about it. So when I was young, I spent my childhood playing my viola. I used to play in orchestras and I had lessons. I went to the junior academy in Glasgow because I was brought up in Scotland, and that was going to be my thing. I was going to be a professional musician. Now, many things about lockdown. One of them is that I'm very glad I'm not a classical musician, because if I had been successful, I wouldn't have actually worked for about 14 months now. So very lucky. That sadly, very sad for my musician colleagues, but as I'm sure you're all aware, construction in particular is part of Boris's recovery plan. So as a key worker, I've worked all the way through. Anyway, so childhood, wanted to be a musician. Actually got to college and thought, well, this is okay. I was still doing what I loved, but I realised that being stuck in a practice room for 4 hours a day wasn't for me. I'm essentially a very sociable person, and I really struggled with that bit of it. So I left college and I got a job in a shop called Marks and Spencer's. Not just any Marks and Spencer's, the very large one in a place called Marble Arch in Oxford Street. And from there, I went into retail management, still doing a lot of playing though. So retail's great, but a lot of Saturdays didn't work very well with my ongoing viola playing and doing gigs and things. So a friend of mine said, it happened to be a double bass player, I'm setting up an electronic design consultancy. Do you fancy coming to do my admin? And I thought, well, why not? So I ended up being the company secretary and got to learn about patents and building gadgets, which was a fascinating first insight into how project delivery works on a very small scale. Then I moved to a place called Swindon in Wiltshire, and I worked at a place called Thames Water. So again, Southern Water connections. My background is now water. So I worked in the call centre, talking to people. Very, very useful skill. I can call anyone about anything, and I'm an extremely good listener as a result of working on the call centre, because actually my job is just as much about listening as about talking. So then I ended up in customer services and I got really poorly. So I had a long time off work and I had to rethink where I was going. And Thames Water said, well, why don't you do an Open University degree? So, well, why not? So they paid for me to do an Open University degree. Ended up being in English literature and some business studies and things. So really useful, very great support at a difficult time in my life. And then I went to work for Major Project. And while I was at Thames Water, I worked on projects to install 500,000 water meters. I helped lay sewage pipes and clean water pipes, major pipelines across fields. And then I would say fairly soon after that, I decided that I'd had enough of Thames Water, so I went to work for a contractor. I went to work for a company called J. Murphy's and Sons. They don't have a lot of work in Sussex, but if you drive around London, you see the green vans. They're very, very distinctive. And I worked for Murphy's for 16 years in streetworks. So I learned all about planning schemes. And the last scheme I did with Murphy's was for Sutton and East Surrey Water. We laid a pipeline from Woodmanston to Purley through 4 London boroughs across the A23, which is the TfL road. So from a streetworks point of view, it was a very challenging job. Now, also as part of my role at Murphy's, I got into communications, because if you've planned streetworks, then actually you can tell customers why things are happening in their way they are, and you can justify the decisions about why it's taking so long to close a road. So it was really invaluable having that technical background as to how streetworks work. And So now my role at Volker Fitzpatrick incorporates all of those things. So I use my listening skills, I use my written English skills from my Open University degree. I worked as a woman in a construction company for 16 years, so that qualifies me to be in charge of equality, diversity and inclusion, because everybody should be included in everything, and I'm very passionate about getting more young women particularly into construction, so it's great to see other female engineers here, and I consider myself very lucky. What I really love about my job is that I have never worked so hard in all my life, but I've also never earned as much money or indeed laughed so much every single day. And how many people can say that about their job? So definitely can't recommend a career in construction highly enough. It's fantastic. You get to build stuff and make a difference. Now, having worked in water for so long and built pipes and done sewer flooding schemes, I think probably the thing I'm most looking forward to about finishing these road schemes is actually driving on them, because that's a bit of a legacy. I helped build that road. So I'm sure everyone else will be telling you about their schemes as well. But yeah, very lucky. There's 3 different job roles in construction, so opportunities for everybody. It's a job for life and it's a fantastic life. So yeah, that's me really. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And presumably there are going to be lots of jobs coming up as well in
Absolutely. So Highways England in particular have, I mean, Volker Fitzpatrick, we've got 2 schemes. So apart from the East Lewis scheme, we're working on a scheme for East Sussex County Council called the A259 upgrade. So we have got jobs, and actually our traffic management contractor has created a new Sussex depot. And recently we've been running a sector-based work academy. So what that's been doing is working with our subcontractors and East Sussex College and Job Centre Plus, and we've got 3 new people on work experience this week. So we're hopefully help them on the pathway back into employment. So not just new jobs for professions, but for people who are quite happy to work hard as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, and don't forget everybody to put questions to Rachel in the chat function.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And so I'm now going to introduce our next guest. He's a gentleman working in a very interesting and growth sector of medtech. So I'd like to introduce you to Jean-Luc Bressard, founder and CEO of Healthx Healthcare. Hello, Jean-Luc.
Good morning, Estelle, and thank you for having me. Wow, I've got to follow that. So my background is pretty conventional, I have to admit. I left university, left school, went to uni. Joined a management training scheme with Unilever. Many of you who use Lynx products and deodorant and that sort of stuff, we used to manufacture all that good stuff for you. As Unilever is a fantastic company, is a fantastic company. My challenge with working there was I probably didn't want to be relocated to a factory working in Grimsby counting fish fingers or peas, which was actually my next role, which probably flies in the face of what we're doing here today and talking about. But I left manufacturing, I left Unilever to go and work in consultancy. So I worked for organisations such as IBM, EY, formerly Ernst & Young, for best part of 15 years. I was exceptionally lucky. I think I've pretty much worked on every continent. I'm part of that brigade of individuals that used to get on planes at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Monday and then fly back home on a Thursday evening from whatever glamorous part of the world I was in. So really learned a huge amount about businesses, other people's businesses, fixing other people's businesses usually, until I decided back in 2015, I think it was, to found my own business. So give or take the last 10 years, I've been working with and certainly technology companies, medical technology companies, medical device companies. And back in 2017, we founded Extransformer Healthcare. And our vision, quite simply, is to create technology-based solutions to support patient pathways. And what that really means is, if you consider right now, when you get sick, you go to a GP, you may see the GP for 5-10 minutes. You may then go forward and meet with a specialist several months later, and you spend 15-20 minutes with them. It's not a huge amount of time in the earliest stages of your illness that you are actually getting some sort of clinical care, clinical input, clinical support. What we're actually doing is we're building hardware devices. We're building software platforms that enable clinicians now to collect data about your specific illness. So we specialize at the moment in musculoskeletal care and lower limb disorders. And what that means is pretty much anything from the hip down. We will give you a device or a set of devices to wear, and we will be able to monitor the quality of your movement. So how you walk, the way you walk, how your feet hit the ground and push off, as well as monitoring your vital signs, your core body temperature and your pulse, your blood oxygen saturation. And from that perspective, we can actually create a digital twin of the patient. What does that mean? Well, it means that a doctor doesn't need to see you. They can actually look on a screen and see how you are doing, all aspects of your well-being and your health, and how that impacts the specific treatment that you are on in that care pathway. So, bridging the continuum of care, we give insight into the patient every day, as long as they wear the device, every day of that treatment cycle. So it is game changing. The technology, the sector that we're in, medtech, deep tech, is game changing. COVID, I think, we are one of the few firms that probably will say that we've had a benefit and uplift from the pandemic, because clearly, as you're all aware, many patients in care homes, etc., required remote monitoring. Because people couldn't go into care homes, and surgeons and doctors could not go into care homes. So data was being collected from patients in care homes and sent to the NHS in order that those patients' conditions could be monitored remotely. And I think that has changed our outlook, broadly speaking, across the sector, across the globe, as to the impact of technology that technology will have ongoing in healthcare. So, as Estelle said, this is a massive growth sector, and it's happening right now. So, has my past, has my meandering career journey impacted how I got here? Probably not. But one of the key things that I try to remember every day is that technology is evolving rapidly. At a rate of knots that just previously could not be imagined. We are doing things today that 10 years ago, people didn't think were possible. So adapting and being prepared to adapt, I think, is one of the core skills that we ask of our staff. The other, and believe it or not, it is a skill. The other skill we ask of people who join our business is to just imagine that everything is possible. Okay, because there is a mental barrier to saying, oh, I don't think that's possible, I can't do that. And if you can't believe, or if you don't believe it's possible, then actually how will it ever be possible? As Estelle mentioned, people like Elon Musk, building Tesla, a car firm that's now valued at, they produce fewer cars than Jaguar Land Rover, but they're valued significantly more than Jaguar Land Rover. So I think it starts to show you how technology is playing, and increasingly will play, a big part in our lives. I'm a big advocate, by the way, before I clam up and allow someone else to speak. I'm a big advocate about technology being open to everyone. You hear many people talking about bad technology or about bad AI. Well, you know, to be perfectly honest, human beings make the technology. There's no such thing as good or bad technology. We can design it better, absolutely. But we can only improve on technology if we allow a multitude of people from different backgrounds to participate in that process. And I think people from BAME backgrounds, women in tech, all of these things are far more important than we give credit to it. You know, they are critical for us making sure that the technology serves all aspects of our community. So we are super keen to ensure that we're not just hiring people from Cambridge University or the Sorbonne or, you know, Oxford University. And yes, we have got people who attended those universities, but we've also just taken on 5 interns into our business on a 2-year internship, and these guys came from socially deprived backgrounds or long-term unemployment, and they are having a fantastic immersive experience in technology. And you know what? We're proving the hypothesis that you don't necessarily need to attend MIT or Oxford University to have a successful career in technology. Every career is going to be technology related, I think, going forward over the next 10 years. So open-minded, you know, and open-minded companies, I think, is probably what is required. But thank you for having me. I hope that you will ask some challenging questions and we have an opportunity to have a dialogue, a discourse later on. So that's me, Estelle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc. That was really informative. Okay. I'm now going to move on to introduce our next guest, who is Laurie Alford, and he is the skills mentor, a fleet consultant at the Tech Automotive UK. So, Laurie, over to you, please.
Thank you, Estelle, and thank you for inviting me to take part in this event. It's great to be back. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting in front of some schools in the future and talking to you face to face. I'm an engineer. I started off, though, importantly, with STEM at school and an apprenticeship. I've been an engineer for 44 years and a mentor since 1982. I've been involved with Gatsby and apprenticeship support schemes. Interestingly, I've been with brewing industries, the water industry. I worked for GE Capital. It's the biggest company in the world at the time. And for the last 20 years, until recently, I worked for the National Freight Transport Association, which is a massive membership organisation. So why is STEM so important? Easy, because it affects every one of us. Every person on the planet has an impact with STEM. And what we've decided to do is get involved and produce a course for schools, lasts about 2 hours. And we start with an icebreaker, and that icebreaker is so interactive. It starts with big picture numbers from 7.8 billion to 1, and 1 is the most important because that's all about you. It's focused on the automotive and transport sector. It's been mentioned a few times already, and we look at that. It's under the abbreviated term called CASE, which stands for connectivity, autonomous vehicles, shared mobility, and electrification. It's already been mentioned twice today, and electrification is massive, and it's going to change, as Jean-Luc just said. Nothing stands still for very long, and even with batteries, electric vehicle batteries, where they are now is not where they're going to be in 10 years' time. They're going to be much cleaner. They're going to be looking at the mineral extraction. They're going to be looking at recycling. So it's a massive issue, electrification, and we will focus on that in the course. Apprenticeships are open to all, definitely, and at all levels. And the best thing to remember, the benefits of apprenticeship for me, is the 4 S's, and that stands for structure, and how the person that takes on an apprentice will be guided all the way through. It stands for the skills that you will get over the period of your apprenticeship. It talks about the support you'll get on your journey from your employer, plus a mentor, hopefully. And then ultimately it's success. Where will a technical apprenticeship take you in the future? Very, very importantly, a lot of people think you do your apprenticeship and you stop. You really do not. The apprenticeship is a foundation for much bigger things going on. And you can go do a technical apprenticeship for 3 years. It can be degree level, it can be technician level, but whatever happens, you can still move up the ladder and progress as you go on. You can do your degree in 10 years' time if that's the way you want to do it. Many people do their engineering degree in their 30s as they progress up the ladder, and that's the way I went. So the pathway from apprentice to technician and engineer, we talk about that on the course. I really enjoy an interactive session using the IMI Auto City website. IMI stands for the Institute of the Motor Industry, and if you get a chance, if you're interested in automotive, please have a look at it and play around with it. There's about 50 to 60 different job roles there that you can interrogate and see what suits you. Many of them are technical, but it's not just technical, I should point out. And importantly, it talks about CV tips. So, you know, play around with it. It takes a good half an hour out, and you can really learn some good tips on that website. What do I look for next as an employer? I'm now of an age and probably in the other side of the desk quite often in doing interviews with people. And what do I look for? And I call it PACE. PACE stands for professionalism, articulate, customer care, and importantly, enthusiasm. And I'd like to try and give tips to people going for an interview to say how important enthusiasm is, positive thinking, and practice, something that you can talk about with confidence is so important. And that's what we're looking for, not necessarily your skills at that time, it's what we can give you to become skillful and professional moving forward. And we talk about that with the GROW model. It stands for goals, realistic goals, option to achieve your goals, and how important it is that your will take it forward. One thing that's really changing quickly is CPD, continuing professional development. What that is lifelong learning, but importantly, logging that lifelong learning. And as technology changes, you will have to show and display that you fully understand and can use equipment properly. CPD is massive from day one when you're an apprentice, but throughout your career. And even people in their 30s, 40s, 50s have to do CPD to get used to that equipment. So it finishes with interview preparation, job search queries, and question and answers at the end. So please get more involved. Contact me if you want us to do more on that type of workshop, but really happy to get more involved and again, ask some questions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laurie. That was really helpful. And I'm now going to introduce our next speaker, and she is Sally McPhee, and she works as a civil engineer in Stantec. Sally, over to you.
Hi everyone, so my name's Sally McPhee. I am a civil engineer with 4 years of experience working in the water industry. So I work for Stantec, which is an engineering consultancy, but I work integrated with the client, which is Southern Water, helping to deliver upgrades to their wastewater treatment works across the region, which is obviously a very glamorous sounding job, but it is really interesting and it's really exciting. So I got here into this role mostly via the traditional route, so GCSEs, A-level, master's degree. But I was convinced that I wanted to be a structural engineer after university. I did a placement in structural engineering, and I kind of realised that it wasn't quite for me. So I spent a year or so kind of unsure about engineering, not really sure where I wanted to go with it. And I think this comes back to what the others have been saying about you can have a plan, you can kind of make your best guess, but it's not always going to go the way you think it's going to go. And all you can do is kind of try things out, see how you feel, and just make your best guess really at what you think you want to do next, and it'll lead to something good in the end if you keep moving in the right direction. So kind of during the year that I was unsure about where I really wanted to go, I kind of learned a bit more about the water industry and what was going on, what the aims were, and I kind of felt that really the water industry was a great way to make a positive impact using engineering, especially in terms of the environment. Obviously a big part of the wastewater sector is stopping harmful pollutants from entering rivers, which obviously is a great thing to be involved in. So water companies kind of have two main jobs. So it's dealing with dirty water from toilets, sinks, and supplying clean water to your tap for drinking. And there's so many challenges in this industry going forward, which challenge, I guess, kind of could have a negative connotation, but I think for engineers, challenges are great. It's just something to focus on, a problem to solve, and it leads to creativity. I would say that's one of the big things that I would say about engineering, is that people might not think it's creative, but to me, it involves so much creativity. You're always trying to think of new things, new way to do things, talking to different people, getting different ideas, and yeah, tackling these challenges that we've got going forward. So yeah, it's a really, really exciting industry to be working in, and yeah, I couldn't recommend it enough, and I'm looking forward to answering all your questions today. That's me.
Thank you very much, Sally. That's really interesting about what you said about engineering being very creative. And I'm pleased to say we do have questions coming in. So thank you, everybody. So we're now going to hear from our next speaker, Chris Roland, and he is the Managing Director of Ovesco. So Chris, over to you.
Hello. I'm Chris Roland, and in my career I wanted to be a photographer, marine biologist. I trained as a furniture designer. I ended up in the construction industry, building spiral and helical staircases, and then went into the glass industry. And about 10 years ago, I became interested in the renewable energy industry because of climate change. Now I work in the community energy sector, and I'm going to talk about careers in decentralized renewable energy. Next slide, please.
Have we gone back?
Thank you. That's the right slide. This is a slide showing how the energy system worked 10 years ago. Energy was predominantly centralized and very reliant on coal, nuclear, gas and large hydro, and energy flowed in one direction from big power stations down to homes and workplaces. Next slide, please. Things have changed over the last decade, and now there's a lot more decentralized energy coming from local distributed generators in the form of solar, wind and hydro. So you'll see solar panels on the roofs of houses now, and they're making energies at those homes and then feeding that back into the grid. The energy industry is now transitioning to a low carbon technology. And as we've seen the rise of prosumers, who are consumers and but also energy generators. So you'll have, as I said, homeowners making their own energy and putting that back into the energy system. And the renewable electricity generation has more than quadrupled since 2010. And coal's share of generation's fallen from 40% in 2012 to under 3% in 2019. So we've moved from those big power stations to lots of small power stations. And the UK has the world's largest offshore wind capacity. Next slide, please. And this is an example taking the solar industry as a sort of case study. Over the last decade, things have changed in the solar industry. In 2011, when Ovesco put solar panels on the roof of Harvey's depot in Lewes, a lot of people said to us that doesn't work, it's too expensive, it isn't worth doing. But over the last decade, we've proved that solar actually works, and over 1 million homes now have solar PV on their rooftops, and a lot of businesses have solar PV as well. We've found that the price of solar has dropped enormously and become a much more popular way of generating electricity. Next slide, please. And this graph here shows how the price of because the price of solar has dropped over the last decade, the industry has grown massively, and it's grown not only in the UK, but also around the world, and is now one of the cheapest forms of electricity supply that you can have. Next slide, please. And this is an example of a solar farm that I was involved with, and I'm director of a company called Meadow Blue Community Energy. So solar's not just installed on the roofs of homes and businesses, but now you'll find it in fields, and particularly in the southeast, because it's sunnier in this part of England than it is in other areas. And there's a growth of the solar industry, and that's continuing. Next slide, please. And obviously you need someone to build these solar sites, and they're called the EPC, or energy procurement contractor. So that's one career that you can have in this area, just fitting the solar panels, connecting everything up, building the structures in order to support the solar panels. Next slide, please. But there's a huge variety of jobs in the renewable energy industry. And just to build that solar farm in that photograph earlier, you need a developer, a planning consultant, an ecologist, an archaeologist, communications consultant, electrical and civil engineer. You needed to work with the district network operator, who actually connects us to the grid. You need to work with finance, and that means working with investors and banks. You need to create a special purpose vehicle or a special company to own the solar farm. You need to work with accountants and bookkeepers. And then you've got the energy procurement contractor who's building the solar farms. But you also got manufacturers, and there's a supply chain for the solar panels, for the inverters, for the structures that are supporting the solar panels. And then there's operation and maintenance. Once the solar farm's built and switched on, someone needs to manage that solar farm and look after it for its whole life. And then when the solar farm ends its life or is rebuilt again with more powerful solar panels in the future, and that will probably be in around 20 to 30 years' time, the whole thing has to be replaced and upgraded. So there's an enormous industry behind this, and it's not just about putting solar panels on the roof. It requires a lot of different careers in order to make this happen. Next slide, please. And we're not just talking about the solar industry. As we switch to low carbon energy, we're going to need to see the retrofit of homes to reduce energy demand, because it's really important to reduce energy demand, because then that takes we don't have to build so many solar farms, we don't have to have so many wind turbines if we can save energy. And we need to switch from oil and LPG in rural areas to electric heat, for example, by using heat pumps. So that means those homes are all going to be well insulated and fitted with heat pumps. And there's a big drive now to switch from oil and get off oil and move to electrical heat. And if you want to know more about that, you could look up Community Heat we've got a website where we're doing a project in Barkham where we're helping the parish of Barkham switch from using oil to heat their homes to electrify their heat in the future, and then move on to provide those homes with charging points for electric cars. And in the Queen's speech on the 12th of May this year, the Energy White Paper set out the transformation of the UK's energy system, and this will create new industries, unleash private capital in green innovation, and support up to 220,000 jobs by 2030. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So if you want to know more about Avesco, and I work in the community energy sector, and what I mean by that is that we create cooperatives that own these solar projects so that local people can invest in them and local people can be employed by those projects as we build them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was really informative. And we're now going to move to our final speaker, Catherine Trainer, and she is the UK Business Development Manager at Electude, and she's hopefully going to sort of in her presentation answer one of the questions about, are there more women in the auto industry now? Okay, so over to Catherine, please.
Thanks very much, Estelle, and it's been great to hear from all the other speakers today and see, you know, how big of a world STEM can be. I've been in the industry for 10 years. I started when I was 17 years old, and the industry of automotive, probably like a lot of other industries we've heard from, is very much like a spider's web, because you can start in the middle and branch out in lots of different directions as you find, you know, your likes and dislikes. But whenever you move, there's always a bridge to another role as well. And I think that's really nice about the industries that we're talking about today, is that you can grow with them and they grow with you. Automotive is a really exciting world to be a part of, and it's also a very big world as well. We've heard about all the different changes that are happening with electric cars and That is something that you would be a part of changing if you chose this as a career. And there's a lot of different sectors that you can work in as well. We have motorsport, training, repair, vehicle design, which touches on the creative points that were made earlier on today, body repair. And it's not all about, you know, heavy lifting gearboxes or finishing first. So in school, safe to say, I struggled quite a lot with the more academic subjects. And I now know that's because I'm what's called a kinesthetic person. And that means that I learn best hands-on, and I learn best when I'm shown how things work instead of trying to read that in a book. So it's very much like if you ask yourself the question, would you rather fly in a plane that the pilot has read a book on flying a plane or done a flight simulator? And that's how I describe the difference between those two things. So in school, I think in year 10, I got the opportunity to do some work experience to see what a practical career would be like. And I chose to do it at an automotive workshop. And I'll admit, when you're young, a lot of the time you're making cups of tea. But I also got the chance to try vehicle repair and change brake pads and do vehicle services. And for the very first time, I had that spark. You know, I finally found that thing that I was good at. And I think in school, we're very pressured into trying to figure out what that thing is. And so it was a really nice moment for me, and one that I'll never forget. And I also realised that cars are very universal as well. It's a little bit like maths, you know, it's the same language in every country. You know, car design is universal. So if I ever wanted to, I could sort of take my career to different countries and still find work. And at 17, I chose to do an apprenticeship in light vehicle repair. And an apprenticeship means that you go to college 1 day a week, and for the other 4 days, you are working in a garage. And most importantly for me, earning for those other 4 days as well. So there was no uni debt for me. And I think that has given me extra, you know, a few extra years of work experience and a few more years of saving as well. But I did squander my first paycheck on an Xbox, actually. So my apprenticeship was 3 years. I became level 3 qualified. And during that time, I actually got the opportunity to do work experience in Germany for Volkswagen. And that's where I realized that I love Volkswagens. I love German cars. And I wanted to go and work for a Volkswagen dealer here in England. So I got a job called a customer service advisor. And that meant that I was involved from the very beginning to the very end of that car's journey in the workshop. So I take the keys from the customer and make sure all that work got done and communicate that back to the customer. And during that time, I actually got a job offer from my current company, Electude. And they're really cool and slightly different because they make video game based animations to train mechanics. Okay, so if you heard me earlier, I'm quite a gamer myself. So I thought it would be the perfect fit, and that's what I do now. And I started with them at 21 years old, and I'm 27 now. So they really took a chance on me at a very young age. And I think that is something that you guys should know as well, is that your age is a skill in itself. You know, you have unbiased views on things. So never feel like inexperience is always a bad thing. And throughout my job, I think one thing has always been the same for me, and that's being a minority. You know, every room I go into, I'm sort of faced with that. And I'm sure that there was probably a few of you surprised to see and hear when I said that I was a mechanic. And you aren't wrong, because in fact, only about 5 to 10% of technicians in England are women. And that's not because it's not a job a woman can succeed in. In fact, a lot of employers say that women are a necessity because they provide that missing piece, missing skill sets and strength to the team. And that's because in diversity, there is strength, you know? So if you think about the Avengers, the reason they're such a good team, the reason that they defeat all the bad guys is because every single one of them has a different weapon, has a different skill set, has a different background, and they work together. But what good is a team of 7 supermen if the bad guy has kryptonite? And that's why diversity is important. And to finish, I just want to say that Automotive is for everyone and STEM is for everyone. And yeah, looking forward to speaking to you all in a minute.
Thank you very much. And we do actually have a very specific question that perhaps you could answer straight away, which is, are there more women in the automotive industry nowadays?
There are more, but it's a very slow uptake. Because if you think about it, if I'm talking to you guys now and maybe inspiring you guys to go into automotive, we're not going to see you for a good 5 years, maybe. So all the work that we're doing now has meant that, yes, there has been increase, but it's very slow.
Thank you very much. And Sophie and Lisa, have we got any questions from the chat to?
Yes, we've got plenty of questions. So my first question is to Jean-Luc, and that's come from our audience. And it is, do you have to study medicine first to work in tech medical care?
Absolutely not, is the answer to that. We've got so many different roles associated with medtech, from software engineers to user interface designers to business analysts to project managers through to data scientists, none of whom have got any medical training. We have a medical advisory board, several clinicians, doctors, surgeons on our board of directors who obviously give us that clinical guidance that all medtech companies should have. But to get in on the ground, you need absolutely no clinical training.
Thank you, John.
Hi, I have a question for Chris. Do any of the jobs in solar energy cross over, or do you have to pick one type of role?
Any of the jobs cross over? What I found is that we've got electrical engineers who work on solar, but they can equally be working on things like heat pumps, projects to install wind turbines, battery storage, or they might be interested in EV cars. It's quite, there's quite a crossover between those industries, definitely.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so I have a question for Rachel. Do you think studying music and working in retail gave you good transferable skills to work in planning and communications?
That's a really interesting question. I would say absolutely, because as I said, I think probably one of the most important skills with doing any kind of communications is listening. So that could be so for example, we've got one customer at the moment who's very upset that we're building a road next to his house. Now, actually, the road was there when he bought his house. So he has some quite irrational reactions to when we're doing particular kind of works. And then actually, if you delve into the backstory, actually he's got a very difficult situation going on at home, which means that actually he's not been out of the house for 14 months because he's got somebody in his family who's got some health challenges. So actually, if you put that in the perspective of what it must be like, because one of the things we've noticed about lockdown is that because people were at home when we were actually doing heavy construction work, because you're in your four walls, your perception of noise when you come out again is very different. So absolutely, I would say I use the listening and the talking, and also in particular, having worked in shops with real people face to face, which seems like quite an alien concept after 14 months of working at home. It does mean that I'm pretty fearless. If somebody's shouting and screaming at me now and getting really, really upset, instead of reacting, the best thing is to listen and then absorb the information and then go back to people. So absolutely. And the other thing as well is it's given me the ability to ask sometimes some quite stupid questions, because how can I possibly explain to customers what we're doing if I don't understand the engineering of it myself? Hence the knowledge of concrete, which I gained from when I was helping build a new sewage treatment works, which I'm sure our colleague from Stantec can attest is a fascinating subject. So I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
I've got a question here for Jean-Luc. Do you have to study medicine first to work in sort of tech medical care?
I think we just had that question.
Did we have that one? I haven't seen that one. I'm very sorry, Jean-Luc.
No, is the
Then we
answer.
then we have one just underneath it, which is probably why I'm getting confused. Are there any courses at college or university level in the medtech industry?
I think the sorts of courses that some of our staff study, they study software engineering at university or college. And if you want to go into this sort of sector, then absolutely, those are the types of roles. But don't forget that this is a sector in its own right. So we've got marketeers, so people who have studied marketing. We've got digital people with digital skills, and one of my team is on the panel, or certainly on the call today. So those are people who are helping to improve our visibility online through social media. There's a whole different courses, including English. Being able to write stuff is a fantastic skill for content, for our websites, for product descriptions, etc. So the industry is open to people who have studied many very different courses. It really just depends on what aspect drives you. I think one of the things that we say is it's great if you want to work in an industry that helps people. And fundamentally, that's what we're about. We're about helping people. Just find your niche, marketing, sales, product development, software engineering. You will find a place. We welcome all comers.
Thank you.
Jean-Luc, sorry to interrupt, but is it true as well that as well as sort of innovating and designing, you are also manufacturing things as well in the area?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this sector is, as I said, it's I wake up and I get to work with a big smile on my face every day, and I go home with a big smile on my face every day because we just love what we do. When I talk to you about the inertial measurement devices, we are making those. So I've got guys, hardware engineers, whose job it is, and they have a ball to play with hardware. They make kit, so they're sitting there with wristbands with lots of electric wires and printed consumer boards and plugging stuff in and making it work. I mean, it's like working at Lego. They're in their element, and these are guys who study electrical engineering, etc. at uni, but they sit there and they manufacture the product, and we basically say, okay, well, that's great, it works, yeah, now make it smaller because it's huge. We need to reduce the size of those wearable devices. So things like your Apple Watch or your Fitbit, we manufacture our equivalent versions of those in order that our patients can wear them, and we can collect the data from the patients. There are certain devices that we would buy off the shelf, but actually, because what we are doing is so novel, we need to make sure that the hardware that we use that support our applications actually is capable of, for example, having a battery life of 12 hours. If you're collecting data constantly from someone, you don't want them to take the device off, so you have to recharge it. So there are many aspects of things that go into our product development that makes it sustainable and creates what we would call efficacy in the deployment of the device.
Thank you. Okay, I've got a next question. This is possibly a good one for Sadie. Do companies want people to swap from other areas of engineering? Do companies give internal training, when you swap from different industries like roadways, robotics, water, etc.?
So yes, I think it's the short answer. I think you definitely could swap into other industries as an engineer. So within the water industry, pretty much every team. So obviously I'm a civil engineer, but I work with a mechanical engineer, a process engineer, which is kind of the chemistry of the process, and an electrical engineer. So the team is already made up of 4 different types of engineers, and yeah, there's a big, especially at the moment, and there will be, I'm sure, in the future as well. There is a demand for more engineers. I'm sure that companies would be more than happy to accept engineers from other industries, because it is a really transferable skill. And yeah, when I started in the water industry, I didn't know anything about how a sewage treatment operates. So you wouldn't be in any different position to me when I started. So yeah, I would say definitely.
Thank you very much.
Right, so shall I take one from our audience member? So Holly has asked, and I think maybe if we can ask this to Rachel, if you were starting your career now, would you go to university or do an apprenticeship?
So for I'm sure Stantec would agree, but I personally think now it would be better to do a degree apprenticeship rather than go to university. I'm not saying that university isn't a fantastic experience, but if you go to university for 3 years, you end up with a huge amount of debt. Whereas what the engineering companies are offering now, and Volker Fitzpatrick included, is a 5-year degree apprenticeship programme. So you effectively study a degree on day release over 5 years. You're building up 5 years of experience. You're getting your degree fees paid for, and then you'll come out of that with no big student loan debt. So if I was looking at somebody of 25, one with a degree and 2 years experience, and somebody with a degree and 5 years experience, I know which one I would go for. As an employer, it's not just about the academic qualifications. I'm looking particularly with students of school age because we do younger, lower HNC apprenticeships as well. I'm looking for, what do people do in their spare time? Do they do any volunteering? What other things make you an interesting person? Hope that helps.
Thanks,
Yes.
Rachel.
Have you got any more questions, Sophie?
Okay. I think that's everything from our audience.
Brilliant. Well, I had a couple more questions. I wondered, speakers, if there are any particular gaps in your sectors at the moment that you think it would be useful for young people to study or train in.
So in construction, there's a huge shortage of archaeologists, because there are so many major projects going on, such as HS2, road schemes and all sorts, that there's actually a massive skills shortage. So we use a company called Headland Archaeology, and they are now doing archaeology apprenticeships. So that's one of we've also got another company that employs apprentice tree climbers to carry out surveys. So just a huge variety of quite unusual jobs. Literally, you can take your pick and go where you want, because we are really, really short of talented people in construction.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers?
Yeah, I think, sorry, Jo, if I could just jump in. I think I touched on it in our presentation, and Laura did as well, but not only do we have a skills gap, but we also have a gender gap, because as I said, we've got sort of 95% male population for technicians right now, and as you can imagine, it makes the thinking quite stale, because things have always been done the same way. And what you find is, when you inject new talent and people from different backgrounds and different genders, you inject a bit of life and inspiration and challenge the way that things have always been done. And I think that's really, really important to do
And as I said earlier, as a young person coming in as well. So yeah, that's a big gap for us.
Thank you. And I think I heard another speaker coming in with a response as well.
In Vesco, we've seen a lot of installers who are saying that there is a real demand for heat engineers, especially around things like air source heat pumps, and they just can't get enough trained people. Some of those companies are setting up their own sort of internal training schemes because they're very desperate to get those people trained up. It does require government policy to make sure that there's a really clear path for the future for renewables, but we're hearing from installers that there's certainly a shortage of trained engineers.
And if I could just add a sentence really from what Catherine has just said. When you think about automotive, it's not just about cars, it's also including commercial vehicles and buses. And we're really struggling as an industry to recruit people wanting to be technicians and fleet engineers in that sector right now.
I'm just going to add my tuppence worth to this, Estelle, as well. Fundamentally, it's my belief, and I hope we've got some schools and teachers plugged in, that we teach modern languages, French, Spanish, Italian. The single language that we're not currently teaching in schools is software engineering. Let's face it, this is the future. Digitization is the future, and I think we are experiencing shortages in excellent software engineers. I don't think you're going to find many unemployed software engineers in the next 10 years in the UK or anywhere else in the world. And I think we need to, as one of my fellow speakers have said, look at education policy and get up to speed with what core skills people will need for the workplace in the next 5 to 10 years, because software engineering is certainly one of them.
Thank you. Now, I know many people will be having to leave to go to their next lessons and things now, but because we're filming, I'd just like to ask a couple more questions if I could. And one of those is, do you have any top tips for success when it comes to finding a great career for yourself that you're going to enjoy?
Yeah, if I could jump in, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but it would be to say yes to every single opportunity and not to siphon yourself too early into one box, because when you're young, that's the ideal time to dip your toe into lots of different things, and that's where you'll get a really realistic view of how you fit into somewhere. And there's been lots of times when I've thought, oh, that's the perfect job for me, and within 5 minutes of walking in the door, it's not for you. And I think that's a much more efficient use of your time. So say yes to everything.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm going to come in on this. Be open-minded. Seriously, be very open-minded. As the previous speakers just said, try everything. Don't say no. Believe that anything is possible. Most of all, believe in yourself. Self-belief is critical to success as an entrepreneur or as an employee. Lastly, and I hate to say this because I'm sure most of your parents have probably said this, there is no substitute for hard work. So, get your head down, whatever it is, your study, your work, put in the hours, because with the hours comes the experience, and with the experience you improve and you become more valuable as an asset to your business. So those are my pointers.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc. Anybody else?
Yeah, so I would say communication is really important. I think that comes back to the trying everything, speaking to everyone, just get as much exposure to new things as you can, and just be interested and learn and ask stupid questions. Sometimes it's difficult to ask a stupid question, but I've learned it's better to ask it and get the answer for the future, and especially while you're young, people will expect it. So ask them now while people want you to be asking the stupid questions, I'd say.
And I would just add that enjoy it. Enthusiasm whilst doing an apprenticeship really shows itself very well. You'll remember the whole experience fondly, hopefully, and you'll just grow and grow, and enjoy it every day that you can. But the early stages of an apprenticeship, just be like a sponge. Ask question after question, and you'll get so much support from your work colleagues. And when the word mentor comes up, it's not always an official mentor. It's quite often someone that you're working with every day that will just give you little tips, and you just build so much friendship from that.
Thank you very much, Lorien. Thank you very much to all our speakers today. I think we have managed to answer everybody's questions, and I've learned even more about the jobs in the sector and the great range of roles. So thank you very much, everybody. And remember that Careers East Sussex are holding further events this week, and they're also creating careers resources on their website. And you can also go to the STEM Hub website and have a look at some of the STEM ambassador videos that have been recorded with lots of examples about what sorts of jobs that people do in the STEM sector. So thank you very much to everybody, and good luck, and I hope your career journey goes well. Thank you, everybody.